Santa Fe County has come under no small amount of criticism over the past year as the specter of oil and gas drilling loomed large. There were no few complaints about the county coming up short on its promise to involve everyone in the process of creating a new drilling ordinance. Now that the ordinance is done, the concern from county residents seems to have died down. But now comes a new ordinance. The drilling ordinance would be just part of it. The bigger ordinance has yet to be written. It would seek to create an umbrella under which all types of development in the county, not just drilling, would fit. County officials have begun a series of public meetings on what needs to be done. KSFR's Marion Cox spoke with County Planning Director Jack Kolkmeyer at that very first public meeting.
We're here starting a series of community workshops that will last a period of about 6 weeks to talk about all the issues involved with growth management.
It's a very tense time for developers wondering if they're going to be able to continue to make a living either under an emergency development ordinance or growth manage at all.
At all, yes. Well, that's a really good point. I don't want to talk too much about the interim development ordinance because that's something that will come back to the Board of County Commissioners next Tuesday. But the basic idea behind the concept is, do we need a timeout to get everything together here to figure out what we should be doing, particularly relative to larger type developments. I think the really good example of how this works when we engage everybody was the work we did in the community college district back in the late 90s. And the way we proceeded with that was to actually do that plan in conjunction with the developers at the table, with neighborhood groups, with everybody else who was involved at that point. Because that way you get to ask the question, as developers, what do you need? What do you want? And then they'll tell you, we need this kind of density, we prefer these kinds of places, and that's what we need. And then the other side is, well, if we can provide that for you, what do we get? And I think the beauty of how the community college district worked is that's really what happened. We were able to give the developers densities at which they could build that they couldn't elsewhere in the county, so they could actually make money and provide the type of housing that we needed, either single-family lot houses or more compact townhouse type things or apartments or whatever they were. In exchange, we got 50% open space. We got a trail system unparalleled around here, really, that connects the community college district to the rail trail, and we got everybody connected to systems, water, wastewater, and road systems. So it works, but you have to want to go into it with the attitude of, let's all talk and do it together.
Why does this feel so much different to me than what was happening during the oil and gas development, regulation development process?
How did it feel different to you? Let me ask you a question, then I'll respond to that.
It felt like I was always playing catch-up with when the meeting was going to occur, or hearing after the fact that the meeting had occurred, or Dr. Freilich had been in town but had just left. This time I feel like the public outreach is phenomenal. Y'all are way ahead of the curve. You're here to meet the public. It just feels a little bit different.
Well, I would answer that by saying that the oil and gas thing presented situations that nobody was used to. And so there was some confusion about how we were going to tackle the problem, what we were going to do. I think the success of this particular growth management process that we're under comes directly from the success of the oil and gas meetings that we had. If that was the learning curve for us, which there were ups and downs, but it was very successful in terms of we got the right kind of ordinance, then one would say, okay, we learned from that, now we're really going to do it right. Because the important thing here is really, this is true democracy works when people come out and get involved and find out what these terms mean, what it's all about, and get involved with us, and that's what we want. I think that actually emanated from the success of the oil and gas meetings that took place.
And I understand from some of your staff that over 50 people showed up the first evening of the first of the 4 planning area meetings?
Yes, on a Monday night, too. So we had a very good attendance, and I think what people saw right away, a lot of times people want to come to these meetings just complain. You know, they want to get into this is what's wrong and this is what's not right and this and that. And they immediately saw that we were going to engage everybody in a different way with the little workstations and the information that we're trying to gather, because we don't want them just to be the B word, complaining sessions. We want them to be really constructive, and I think that's what people are seeing that right now, and they're giving us the kind of information that I may not agree with you, or I don't like what you're doing, or you guys don't do this or don't do that, but here's what I want to know, because the real point that we're trying to get to here is problem solving. as a community of people. And if we got problems, how do you want us to solve them? What are our options? Help us. And then if we can do them, that's what we'll try to bring about as the really important options here.
We know that the oil and gas ordinance has passed the Board of County Commissioners. We know that at least the timeline for some sort of growth management ordinance to be presented before that board is perhaps June of 2009. How long does it take after you get an approved ordinance to get all the code enforcement and all the regulations in place? In other words, how long does it take before we see on the ground results from a good, solid oil and gas ordinance or a growth management ordinance?
Well, it really varies. That's a hard one to answer, because then if I give you a specific date or time, of course, we'll never meet it. So it's really difficult. What we're shooting for is to do this growth management plan up through till about June to have the really final drafts of that completed. Parallel with this, we're also working on the Land Development Code, the LDC, which will be the actual enforcement of the plan. So once we get done in June or July, then that development code goes a little further. We're hoping by the end of the year, everything's in place and done.
County Planning Director Jack Kochmeyer speaking with KSFR's Marion Cox.